Christmas Eve is supposed to feel warm. Even when you're alone, there's usually something comforting about it, the distant hum of traffic, a neighbor's TV bleeding through the walls, the quiet certainty that everyone else is tucked safely inside their own homes. That night, my house felt hollow. Too quiet. Like it was holding its breath. This happened in 2019, during my second year of college. I lived in a small townhouse about a 10-minute walk from campus. It wasn't fancy, but it was affordable, and normally it felt safe. There were 3 of us living there, all girls, but because of the holidays, I was completely alone. Both of my roommates had gone back to their parents' houses for Christmas. I hadn't. I worked in healthcare at the time, and of course, I'd been scheduled for Christmas Day. No family gathering. No late-night laughter. Just an early alarm and another shift. I told myself I didn't mind. That night, I locked the front door, flipped off the lights, and headed downstairs to my bedroom. The house creaked the way it always did, old pipes, settling wood. Normal sounds. Familiar sounds. I crawled into bed and scrolled through TikTok, killing time until I felt tired enough to sleep. An hour passed. Midnight came and went. Christmas Day. That's when I heard the noise. At first, it sounded like chairs scraping against the kitchen floor. The kitchen sat directly above my bedroom. I froze, listening. The sound was brief, just a few seconds, then silence. My first thought was the neighbors. We shared walls, and they could be loud sometimes. I almost laughed it off. Almost. Then I remembered something. Earlier that evening, one of my roommates had texted me, asking if I could bring in a package while she was gone. It was supposed to arrive that day. I sat up slightly in bed. The noise had come from inside the house. Before I could think any further, my bedroom door began to open. Slowly. Silently. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I couldn't. My bed faced the doorway directly. The glow from my phone lit up my face, bathing the room in pale blue light. I wanted to drop it. I wanted to pretend I was asleep. But it was too late. The door opened just enough for someone to step inside. He stopped. One foot crossed the threshold. The rest of him remained in the hallway. We stared at each other. I couldn't see his face clearly, my eyes were still adjusting to the darkness, but I could see enough to know this wasn't a roommate. Or a friend. Or anyone who should have been there. He was wearing a backwards baseball cap. That detail burned itself into my memory. For what felt like an eternity, but was probably no more than 10 seconds, we just stood there. Me, frozen under my blankets. Him, motionless in my doorway. Then, slowly, he pulled his foot back. And gently closed my bedroom door. I lay there in complete silence, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it through the walls. I didn't know if he was still inside the house. I didn't know how he got in. And worst of all, I didn't know why he hadn't hurt me. I didn't move for a long time after he closed the door. I lay there, staring at the faint outline of my bedroom ceiling, every muscle locked tight. My phone screen dimmed, plunging the room into darkness, and I didn't dare tap it back on. I was terrified the light might give away that I was awake, that I was watching. My heart hammered so hard it made my ears ring. He knows I'm here, I thought. He saw me. The house was silent again, but it wasn't the comforting kind of silence. It felt intentional, like someone was listening, waiting for the smallest sound to betray me. I counted my breaths. 1, 2, 3. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. It wasn't the usual settling sound. This was slow. Careful. The kind of noise someone makes when they're trying not to be heard. He was still inside. My bedroom door didn't have a lock. That realization hit me like ice water. I'd never thought much about it before, this was my home, after all, but now the thin slab of wood between me and him felt useless. I slid my hand under my pillow and wrapped my fingers around my phone. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. But I hesitated. What if he heard me talking? What if calling the police made things worse? Another sound came from upstairs, this time unmistakable. A cabinet opening. The soft clink of glass. Someone was going through the kitchen. My stomach twisted. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't panicking. He was comfortable. I slowly rolled onto my side, inch by inch, trying to make as little noise as possible. My eyes adjusted enough to make out the dark shapes in my room. My dresser. My desk. The door. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. A thin line of light appeared beneath the door. The hallway light was on. I was sure I'd turned off every light before going to bed. I stared at that glowing strip, waiting for it to move, to flicker, anything. But it stayed steady. Minutes passed. Maybe longer. Time didn't feel real anymore. Then footsteps approached my door again. Slow. Deliberate. They stopped just outside. I squeezed my eyes shut, every nerve screaming. I held my breath, terrified the rise and fall of my chest would give me away. The doorknob didn't turn. Instead, something brushed against the door itself, fabric, maybe. Someone leaning close. I swear I could hear him breathing. A soft sound followed. Barely audible. A sniff. He was smelling the air. I nearly gagged from panic. Then, just as suddenly, the pressure disappeared. The footsteps retreated down the hall, back toward the stairs. I waited another full minute before daring to breathe again. That was when my phone vibrated. I almost screamed. I clamped a hand over my mouth, fumbling to silence it. The screen lit up, painfully bright in the dark. A text message. From my roommate. Hey, weird question, did you bring that package inside? Tracking says it was delivered hours ago. My blood ran cold. Because I hadn't brought any package inside. And suddenly, everything made horrifying sense. Someone hadn't broken in randomly. Someone had come looking for something. Something that was already inside my house. I stared at my roommate's message until the words blurred. Tracking says it was delivered hours ago. My mind replayed the sounds from upstairs, the drawers opening, the cabinets, the unhurried footsteps. He wasn't stealing randomly. He was searching. And whatever he was looking for, he hadn't found it yet. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the bed to steady myself. I typed back as quietly as I could. No. I didn't bring it in. Someone is inside the house. Please call the police now. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then disappeared. Seconds stretched into agony. Every nerve in my body was screaming that I was running out of time. From upstairs came another sound, sharper this time. Frustrated. A drawer slammed shut. Footsteps paced across the kitchen, no longer cautious. He was getting angry. I slid off the bed and lowered myself to the floor, pressing my ear against the carpet. The noise carried clearly through the vents and floorboards. A muttered voice drifted down. Too low to make out words. But unmistakably male. I felt bile rise in my throat. He spoke again, louder this time, and I caught a fragment. Should have been here. My heart dropped into my stomach. He expected the house to be empty. Which meant seeing me awake in my bed hadn't scared him off. It had changed his plan. Suddenly, heavy footsteps crossed the living room above me and headed toward the stairs. Not careful anymore. Not slow. I scrambled back to my feet and looked around my room in desperation. There was only one exit, the door. The small basement window sat too high and too narrow to crawl through, even if I ha.
Before we move on, please donate me in the form of subscribe.
The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. Then began to descend. Each step boomed through the house. I backed into the corner beside my dresser, gripping the bat so hard my knuckles burned. Tears streamed down my face, silent and uncontrollable. Please don't come in. Please don't come in. The stairs creaked as he reached the bottom. Then, silence. I held my breath. Footsteps moved across the basement level. Closer. Closer. They stopped directly outside my bedroom door. The handle didn't turn right away. Instead, something scraped softly against the wood. Like fingernails. Tracing the surface. I bit down on my sleeve to keep from sobbing. Then his voice came through the door. Low. Calm. Almost amused. I know you're awake. Every muscle in my body seized. You left your light on, he continued. That was careless. I squeezed my eyes shut, my vision swimming. He spoke like this was a conversation we were supposed to be having. Like he belonged there. I'm not here to hurt you, he said, and I knew that was a lie. I just need something. You can help me, and this doesn't have to get ugly. The doorknob rattled slightly. Open the door. I didn't answer. The silence stretched. Then his tone changed. Sharp. Annoyed. That package, he snapped. Where is it? Before I could stop myself, my phone buzzed again. Loud. Too loud. A call this time. My roommate. And on the other side of the door, the man went completely still. The phone buzzed again in my hand. I stared at it in horror, frozen, as my roommate's name lit up the screen. The vibration felt impossibly loud, like it was echoing through the entire basement. On the other side of the door, the man didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't speak. For one terrifying moment, I thought maybe he hadn't heard it. Then he laughed. It was soft at first, barely more than a breath, but it crawled under my skin and settled there. I clutched the bat tighter, my hands slick with sweat. Go ahead, he said quietly. Answer it. I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. The phone stopped vibrating. A second passed. Then it rang again. Louder this time. More insistent. His fingers curled around the doorknob. I could hear the faint squeak of metal as he tested it, slowly, deliberately. She's worried about you, he said. You don't want her calling the police for no reason, do you? I wanted to scream that it wasn't for no reason, that he was right there, but fear sealed my throat shut. The doorknob turned. Not fully. Just enough to let me know it worked. Unlocked. A sob escaped me before I could stop it. His grip tightened. Don't cry, he said, almost kindly. That makes this harder than it needs to be. The phone rang a third time. And then, over the ringing, I heard something else. Sirens. Distant, but real. The man froze. For the first time since he'd come downstairs, he sounded uncertain. What did you do? He hissed. I didn't answer. The sirens grew louder. He released the doorknob and stepped back, swearing under his breath. Footsteps retreated down the hall, fast and uneven now. He was panicking. I slid down against the wall, shaking violently, my body finally giving in to the terror I'd been holding back. Tears blurred my vision as I pressed my phone to my ear. Hello? I whispered. My roommate was crying on the other end. They're on their way, she said. I called 911. They said stay on the line, are you safe? I don't know, I whispered back. He was right outside my door. The sirens were close now, close enough that I could hear them bouncing off nearby buildings. Red and blue light flashed faintly through the basement window. Upstairs, something crashed. A door slammed open. Footsteps thundered across the living room, no longer careful at all. He was running. I heard the front door slam so hard it rattled the walls. Then silence. The siren stopped outside my house. Someone shouted. Another voice answered. I stayed on the floor, too afraid to move, until heavy footsteps came down the basement stairs, slow, authoritative, nothing like his. Police, a voice called. Is anyone down there? I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. They found me curled against the wall, still clutching the bat, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. An officer wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and guided me upstairs. The house looked different in the flashing lights. Wrong. Drawers open. Cabinets emptied. Couch cushions tossed aside. My roommate's bedroom door stood wide open. And sitting on the kitchen counter was a small, torn cardboard box. The package. Inside was a single velvet pouch. Empty. The officer looked at me gently. Do you know what was in here? I shook my head. My roommate arrived 20 minutes later, pale and trembling. When she saw the box, she went very quiet. Then she told us the truth. Her ex-boyfriend had sent it. Inside had been a key. Not to our house. But to a storage unit. One she'd never told anyone about. And suddenly, the man in the backwards baseball cap made horrifying sense. The kitchen felt colder after my roommate said that. A key. Not jewelry. Not money. Not something random that could be replaced. A key meant access. It meant there was something somewhere that man wanted badly enough to walk into a house on Christmas Eve and stand over a girl while she slept. The police asked her who her ex was. She hesitated. That hesitation told them everything. His name was Evan. They'd dated for almost 2 years before she finally broke things off. He was controlling, obsessive, the kind of person who remembered tiny details and never let anything go. When she'd left him, she thought blocking his number and moving apartments would be enough. It wasn't. The storage unit was in her name, rented years earlier when she'd been between apartments. She'd forgotten about it, mostly. It held old boxes, clothes, paperwork. And one thing she never mentioned out loud. She looked at me when she said it. He doesn't know what's in there, she whispered. I never told him. But he knows it's important. The officers exchanged a look. They asked if he had a criminal record. He did. Breaking and entering. Stalking. A restraining order from a previous girlfriend that had expired months before. Suddenly, the house felt like a crime scene instead of a home. The police searched the surrounding area, but he was gone. No footprints in the snow. No nearby cameras had caught his face clearly enough. All we had was the backwards baseball cap one officer found discarded in the alley behind our house. I didn't sleep that night. None of us did. The police stayed for hours, taking statements, photographing the house, dusting for prints. Every sound made me flinch. Every shadow felt like him standing in a doorway again. At dawn, one of the officers returned with an update. The storage unit had been broken into. That morning. The lock had been cut clean through. Whatever Evan had been after, he got it. My roommate collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. I sat beside her, numb, staring at the floor. The officer asked her again, gently, what had been in the unit. She took a long, shaky breath. My old phone, she said. The one I used when we were together. The room went quiet. He used to take it, she continued. Read my messages. Track me. I hid it after I left him because it had evidence. Pictures. Recordings. Things he said. Things he did. My stomach twisted. And you didn't give it to the police? The officer asked. I was scared, she admitted. He said if I ever showed anyone, he'd make me regret it. The threat echoed in my head. This doesn't have to get ugly. That wasn't a lie meant for me. It was a promise meant for her. Later that day, we were allowed back inside. The police advised us not to stay there, at least not for a while. I packed a bag with shaking hands, my eyes constantly darting to doorways and corners. As I grabbed my coat, something fell out of the pocket. A small object clattered onto the floor. Metal. Cold. I stared at it, my heart stopping. A key. Not the storage unit key, the one from the package. This one was different. Newer. And I had no idea how it got into my coat. I stared at the key in my palm for a long time. It was heavier than it looked. Plain silver. No label. No markings. The kind of key you don't notice until it's already opened something it shouldn't have. I didn't put that there, I said quietly. My roommate looked up from the couch, her face still blotchy from crying. The color drained from her cheeks when she saw it. That's not mine, she whispered. The officer took it from me using a gloved hand. He turned it over, studying the grooves. Did anyone touch your coat tonight? He asked. I shook my head. No. It was hanging on the back of my chair. I grabbed it when they said we could leave. The officer didn't say anything for a moment. Then he asked a question that made my stomach twist. Are you sure your bedroom door was closed when you went to sleep? I hesitated. I think so. Think wasn't good enough. Because suddenly, every detail of that night replayed itself with a new edge. The way the man had spoken to me. Calm. Familiar. Like he'd already been in my space before. Like he knew things. The officer placed the key in an evidence bag. We'll run it, he said. See what it opens. They drove us to my roommate's parents' house across town. I barely remember the ride. Every streetlight looked like someone standing at the curb. Every passing car felt like it slowed too much when it went by. I didn't sleep there either. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the door opening. The silhouette. The backwards cap. I heard his voice. I know you're awake. The next afternoon, the police called. They'd identified the key. It belonged to a locker at the campus gym. Not my roommate's. Mine. I didn't even remember getting it.
The Silent Screams, the channel of interesting horror stories. If you are new on this channel, then don't forget to subscribe The Silent Screams and press the bell icon for interesting stories.